Welcome back to math. In section 2, we're going to talk about fractions. Multiply, simplify, divide, add and subtract, mixed and proper, and what's bigger. Fractions are all about dividing things up into parts. The numerator is divided by the denominator. The numerator is the top. The denominator is the bottom. That's D, denominator for down. 1/4 means 1 divided by 4. It means that we've taken something, divided it into 4 equal parts, and we have one of those parts. So if you took a sandwich, divided it into 4 equal pieces, and you ate one, you'd say you ate 1/4 of the sandwich. Any integer can be a fraction. Remember, any number that's divided by itself, that's the identity, so it doesn't change its value, it just changes the format. So 3 divided by 1, or 3 over 1, is the same as 3. But we can't divide by 0, so anything that has a denominator of 0 we call undefined. Multiplying fractions is very straightforward. You just do it straight across. Multiply the numerator by the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. 3 times 2, that's 6. 4 times 3, it's 12. We usually want our answers to be in the most simplified format for fractions, and that means that they don't have any common factors in the top and the bottom, that's the numerator and the denominator, and they're also not improper. We'll talk about what that means in just a few minutes. So our answer to the last problem was 6/12, but we can simplify that. There's 2 ways to do it. We can notice, first of all, that there's a factor of 6 in both the top and the bottom. And we can start by dividing the top and the bottom by 6. And remember, with fractions, this is important. As long as you do the same thing to the top and the bottom, you only change the format, you don't change the value. So let's first start by dividing the top and the bottom by 6. 6 divided by 6, 12 divided by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. The other way to do that would be to notice that you can have, you can factor out the 6. 6 is 6 times 1, and 12 is 6 times 2. And what we do is we cancel that out. We call this canceling. We say, oh, there's the same thing in the top and the bottom. If we remove those, we change the format but not the value, and again, we get 1/2. You can do that before or after you do your problem. We just did it after the problem. Now let's do it before. Before we even multiply this one, let's notice that 3 and 6 have a common factor of 3. So 3 is 3 times 1, 6 is 3 times 2, and we can factor 3 out. Get rid of the 3 on the top and the 3 on the bottom. Again, as long as you do the same thing to the top and the bottom, you change the format, not the value. So now we can go ahead and do our multiplication. Now we just have 1 times 1 equals 1, and 4 times 2 equals 8. Dividing by fractions is a lot like multiplying fractions, but it's kind of like doing the opposite. Multiplication and division are opposites. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. That means that we're going to take the second one and we're going to flip it over. That's the reciprocal. Let me show you so that makes more sense. We have 5/8 divided by 2/3. Leave the 5/8 alone for just a minute. Change the division to multiplication and flip. Instead of 2 over 3, we have 3 over 2. Now it's just like a regular multiplication problem. You go straight across. 5 times 3 equals 15. 8 times 2 is 16. There aren't any common factors in 15 or 16, so that's our final answer. To add and subtract fractions, though, we have to have the same or a common denominator. Here's the first example that already has the same common denominator. This is 1/5 plus 2/5. The denominator is the same. So we have one thing plus 2 things. 1 plus 2 is 3. We keep the denominator the same. We add the numerators, keep the denominators the same. And it makes sense. 1 thing plus 2 things is 3 things, and in this case, the things that we have are fifths. Alright, so what happens if they don't already have the same denominator? Well, we can change their format, not their value, but their format, so that they do have the same value. It always works to take the two denominators, multiply them together. 2 times 3 is 6. So we can convert to 6 in order to make these a common denominator. We'll start with 1/2. We're going to multiply this by 1, but not just any old one. We're going to multiply it by 1 in the form of 3 over 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And when you multiply anything by 1, you get itself. So we're changing the format, not the value. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. So 1/2 is also the same as 3/6. Plus 1/3, again we're going to multiply by 1, but in this case we're going to multiply it by 2 over 2. And where am I getting this from? Well, remember, this is so we get the same thing. What do I multiply 3 by to get 6? We decided that 6 was going to be our common denominator. So 1 times 2 is 2, 3 times 2 is 6. Now we have 3/6 plus 2/6. 3 plus 2 equals 5, and we keep the 6. Here's another example. This time we're doing subtraction, but it works the exact same way as addition does. We have 3/4 minus 1/2. And we'll start by saying, what's a common denominator? Well, 4 times 2 would be 8. So we can do this to get eighths. 3/4. We're going to multiply by 2 over 2. Right, that's the other denominator. And we're going to get 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 2 is 8. So 3/4 is the same as 6/8. 1/2. We're going to multiply that by 1. And in this case, we're going to multiply it by 1 in the form of 4 over 4. 4 over 4 is 1. So we're changing the format, not the value. 1 times 4 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Okay? Now we're just going to do the subtraction. You subtract the numerators. 6 minus 4 is 2. And 8's stay the same. You keep the denominators the same. 6 things take away 4 things is 2 things. The things this time are eighths. So to save ourselves some time, we're going to talk about the least common denominator, because this can sometimes take some steps out of it. This is the exact same problem we just did, 3/4 minus 1/2. But if I had noticed before that I can convert halves to fourths, I wouldn't have had to do anything at all to the 3/4. So this time I'm going to leave 3/4 alone, and I'm going to convert the half to fourths. How am I going to do that? I'm going to multiply by 2 over 2. That's what I need to do to get the denominator to be 4. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. Bringing this down. 3/4 minus 2/4 is 1/4. That saved us a lot of time. We got the exact same answer as before. Actually, I didn't simplify the one before, but if I had, it would have been 1/4. Now let's talk about mixed fractions. A mixed fraction is when we have a whole number and a fraction together. Like here we have 3 and 1/5. We say 3 and 1/5. 3 whole things and 1/5 of the things. So how do we convert that into what we're going to call an improper fraction? Because sometimes we need to do some operations on this where it's easier if that's in another format. Again, we're just moving the formats around now, we're not changing its value. Well, okay, fifths. A whole thing in a fifth is 5/5, right? 5/5 is the same as 1. So if we have 3, that means we have 5/5 plus 5/5 plus 5/5. There's our 3 whole things. And then we have 1/5. So we're adding fractions. The denominators are all the same, so we keep the denominator. We add the numerators. 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16. 3 and 1/5 is the same as 16/5. Now there's a little faster way to do that. You can just take the whole number, that's 3, multiply it by the denominator, 5. 3 times 5, 15, plus the numerator that we had is 1. 15 plus 1 is 16. And that's what we would have gotten anyway. 3 5s, 3 times 5, plus that extra 1, 16/5. A fraction is considered improper when its numerator is bigger than denominator. It's a fine way to work with something sometimes, but it's considered not simplified to its best format. So how do you do that? It's kind of the reverse of how we just converted a mixed to an improper. Instead of multiplying, we're going to divide. 14 divided by 3. Well, it doesn't go in there evenly, but it does. 3 goes into 14, 4 times, right? 3 times 4 is 12, and the remainder, 14, take away the 12, is 2. 2 what's? Well, it's 3. So really what you're saying is, remember, this is all division. 14 divided by 3 is 4, with a remainder of 2. 2 what's? 2/3. 14/3 is the same as 4 and 2/3. How do we tell which fraction is bigger than another fraction, has a greater value than another one? Well, many people look at 1/3 and 1/4, and they jump to the conclusion that 1/3 is less than 1/4 because 3 is smaller than 4. But really, the best way, the only way to really compare fractions to fractions is to give them a common denominator. 3 times 4 is 12. So let's convert both of these to twelfths. Okay. In order to get the denominator to be 12, we need to multiply by 4, and that's in the format of 4 times 4, or 4 divided by 4, that's 1. 1 times 4 is 4, 3 times 4 is twelfths. So 1/3 is the same as 4 twelfths. 1/4, we're going to change that to thirds, because 3 times 4 is 12. We're really just taking the other denominator here. And I'm going to do it in the format of 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Multiply by 1, you change the format, not the value. 1 times 3 is 3. 4 times 12 is, 4 times 3 is 12. So now it's really easy to see that 4 twelfths is more than 3 twelfths. If you divide a pizza into 12 pieces and you eat 4, that's more than if you'd only eaten 3 pieces of pizza.